in the war. I'll put up a map. If you can show us where you served. I guess if you're on a boat, you sort of serve in a general area. Yeah. You went to the Atlantic as well? Okay, so we'll have to talk about that. So what, Mr. Peden, what was your job in the, you were at the Navy?
I was boatswain second class.
Okay, so you were a boatswain's mate?
Yes.
Excuse me. The boatswain's mate is the real Navy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What is a boatswain's mate?
I had charge of all the gear in the ship and keep him right on it. All side cleaners, whenever we go into port, the first thing we do is touch up the paint on the sides, but salt water would deteriorate real quick.
Okay.
Boatswain's mate's the #1 enlisted man on the ship.
What do you mean by that?
Everybody else is subordinate to him.
It was right-hand rate, some of my left-hand rate, but it was the highest of the right-hand rates.
Okay. So some of the jobs you would do then would be painting the boat, not necessarily to make it look nicer, but to keep it from deteriorating.
Yes.
Camouflage. What would the camouflage look like? Camouflage for a ship.
Red, blue, just intermingled. Looked like a wave of a ship.
Okay. So ships would be painted gray and blue patterns
Yeah.
to make it fit in with the sea. What other kind of job would a boatswain make?
Well, during battle, I was the last ship, one ship I was got sunk on any aircraft gun. And the last ship I was on was damage control, which I didn't like at all. It was all below deck. We couldn't see what was going on.
So you served an anti-aircraft gun and then damage control down below. It may seem like an obvious question, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. What is an anti-aircraft gunner supposed to do?
Shoot aircraft.
Yeah. What kind of aircraft would you have coming at you?
We had Type 97 Beckie bombers come over 50,000 feet. Had some come right down between us. They thought we wouldn't shoot at each other. We shot at each other and shot them all down. We didn't have experience at all.
Did you ever have an opportunity to shoot an enemy plane?
Yeah.
A couple times?
Several times. We were rated 3 times a day for 3 days after we hit Guadalcanal. And they came over from all different angles.
Japanese did?
Yeah. But they weren't kamikazes yet. The kamikazes came later. After they were more desperate, they started being suicide bombers.
Yeah. Now some of the students here, as I tell all the vets, have a better feel for the war than others. So you just mentioned kamikazes. Could you tell us first what a kamikaze was and why did the Japanese begin to use kamikazes?
They were had enough gasoline to get to the destination. That's all it had. They had to kill themselves. And they dived onto your ship, tried to get down on an aircraft. They tried to go down the elevator shaft.
So they're suicide missions.
Yeah.
Right?
One hit us right below, the deck below me, blew me to the overhead, and it about 15 foot hole all over the water line. It made us go down to the bow, real extremely. And they told me to go folks on the rig for a tow line. They said, "See, go and tug out for us," and we got underway on our own power. We pulled into Camaretto, which is near Spokane, and they put a steel plate over our hatch that was, water was up the top of that hatch. They put a steel plate over it, a garden hose around the combing, put that steel plate over it, showed the overhead, and we went from there to Guam that way, although it flooded some tanks on the aft part of the ship to right us. In other words, we were like this. They put water in the aft part of the ship, tanks, and made us level, but we floated real low in the water. We went from Okinawa to Guam. We were in Guam for 6 weeks, dry down.
So the boat you're on was hit by a kamikaze? So I'm guessing by the time you saw a kamikaze, you've been in a combat situation several times
Oh
by
yeah,
then?
I've been in the Gay and Gulf invasion, Iwo Jima.
So the big ones.
So we've been to kamikaze when the ship I was on, something, Solomon's, we weren't hitting with kamikazes. We had 4 torpedo heads, and the 5th that didn't go off. 4 torpedo heads, 5th that didn't go off. Over 100 shell hits. Heavy torpedo got heavy gasoline supply and 248 8-inch magazines. Blew that all up and killed everybody on the bridge, which is the deck below me. I never went down to the main deck. They told us to abandon our guns. We got down to the main deck and we were stationed fast. And there's a bunch of guys milling around and said, what are we going to do? Life jackets are all burned up. There's 2 life rafts right there. I said, well, they got an accident. The guy gave me a knife, go up and cut a life raft down, went down with it. I followed down fast I could. By the time I got down, it was gone. So I went back up, cut another one down, and I cut the bottom lashings first, fell with it. I never did get to my feet again. The guys had it and was going with me, dragging me.
Wow. How old were you when all this was
I was
going
18.
on? 18. So you were on one ship that was sunk and another that was hit by a kamikaze.
Yeah.
And did you ever find yourself in the years after the war wondering how you made it out?
Yeah, many times, for a while, my wife and I got married, we lived in a furnished house, and we had a clock on one piece of furniture that struck the hour. It sounded just like the General Quarters alarm on that ship I was on.
Brings back memories.
It's 12 o'clock tonight, bong, bong, and here I run right into
Mr. Stroud, and we'll, once we get the basic stories, then we'll come back and I'll probably throw the same questions at you. What did you do in the war? What is it? What is it and where is it?
Okinawa is an island. It was the last battle of the war was here on Okinawa. And it was the toughest battle, toughest meaning the largest in the Pacific. And he mentioned kamikazes. There were more ships lost at Okinawa than were lost in all United States prior history. More ships sunk.
When did the Battle of Okinawa take place?
April the 1st, 1945. It was declared secured around June the 18th, and it was declared won on July the 2nd. But the Japanese didn't know it. And the Japanese army surrendered about 2.5 months later.
So you spent most of your time in service on Okinawa?
No, I spent 5 months on Okinawa. No, excuse me. Spent 8 months on Okinawa.
And what was your job when you were there?
I was a surgical technician at an evacuation hospital, Navy evacuation hospital.
So surgical technician. So what sort of things what would a normal day be like if you're on the job?
Well, the worst time we ever had was when we call them not tornadoes, but the hurricanes. What do they call them?
Typhoon.
What's that?
Typhoon.
Typhoon. Thank you. Yeah. When the typhoons hit, all of our military men hit the caves. There were a lot of tombs and caves in Okinawa. And unfortunately, several of the caves had been ammunition dumps for us. And so an ammunition dump blew up, and it injured hundreds of guys. And this is my greatest recollection. We started working on them on a Monday evening early, and we finished Friday noon without stopping.
On all kinds of wounds.
Burns, broken bones, perforated wounds, shrapnel.
So you were a surgeon's assistant? Could you tell the students the story you told me this morning about when you were in training at the Great Lakes?
Oh. I like to tell people that I did an appendectomy all by myself. But then I was telling them the reason was the surgeon and I had assisted him many times. So he knew what I knew and what I could do. And So about the time we were about ready to start the appendectomy, another emergency came in and he had to handle right away. So the patient, the appendectomy patient, was on the operating table, and this other patient was brought in on a gurney. And the surgeon saw that he had to do something right away on this other case, so he turned to me and said, "Proceed." Well, it was really easy for me because I had done every part of the operation several times with him, but I did a whole operation by myself. But he was right there.
Now, after doing all this medical work in the war, why didn't you go on in private life to become a doctor?
I had enough.
Seen enough. All right.
Let me add to that too, and say that I was able to see what it really meant to be a good surgeon, like a missionary. You have to have the heart for it. You can't view it any other way. Because I could see surgeons, and the surgeons because they wanted to be surgeons, and I saw surgeons who had a heartfelt concern for their patients.
What was it like? I imagine, well, you mentioned this 1 week where you go Monday through Friday straight through. But I imagine, even though that was extreme, probably, I'm guessing, on a day-to-day basis, you're seeing, you know, guys have been harmed, hurt one way or another. In a way, what happens? You sort of get used to that. On the other hand, does it kind of wear you down psychologically or emotionally to see guys who've been wounded in one way or another?
You get used to it. You get used to it.
Do you start hearing
what your mental set is you want to help somebody, and you want to take care of them, and you're not concerned. Your mind is not set on the injury or on how it will affect him in the long run. It's let's get the job done now.
Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning of the war. Now, I guess you joined the Navy? Or
I
did
joined
you?
In July of 41.
Was that voluntarily?
Yes.
In July of 41?
And when, in fact, about a year and a month later, our first ship was sunk. When the war started, we were 300 miles out of Cape Town, South Africa, escorting a bunch of English soldiers to Singapore. And they had us turn around, and the war started, had us turn around and go back to Cape Town. Radar, things that we didn't have.
So you joined the Navy in, let's back up a little bit. You joined the Navy in July of 41.
Yeah.
So the U.S. wasn't formally at war.
Well, we knew we were going to get war, but we weren't going to get war.
Why did you join up? Because most of the vets you talk to, they say, well, you know, the war came and I knew I was going to be drafted, so then I was drafted, or I knew I'd get drafted, so I decided to join. But we have had one other vet who decided to join up beforehand. So why did you join up beforehand? Do you remember what was motivating you?
Well, I knew we were going to go to war. At least I survived the war. We did. After we got sunk, cruiser was sunk. I was sent back to Pearl Harbor, Inner Harbor Patrol. I was there 6 months, and I put the in to go back to sea. My commanding officer said, "Norman, you're crazy." He said, "You can stay here the rest of the war and never see any more action." But I went anyway, and I was in 4 more major invasions, almost got stuck in the Atlantic. And our ship that was, destroyer escort that was with us, saw a torpedo coming at us. He hit right midships, and he just split right in half and went right down immediately. All those guys, we couldn't stop picking them up because that submarine was after us anyway.
Now, is this the Atlantic? Or this the Pacific?
The Atlantic.
All right, so let's talk about this for a second then. So you joined the war in July, and you know the country's going to war. Are you thinking Europe, or are you thinking Asia?
I didn't know. I didn't know that Japan was going to hit, so
So when the attack came in December 41, that came as a surprise?
yeah.
And you said that you were out there in the Atlantic. When did you start escorting in the Atlantic? When were the escort boats you were on out in the Atlantic?
Well, this is probably, we probably started last part of February.
Of 40,
Not February, I mean November.
of 42,
42, 41.
41. So before war was even declared, at least formally, although the U.S. was actively helping the Brits.
That's
So-
right, we were doing that illegally. I mean, we were escorting them, and we weren't supposed to be escorted. They were in the Englishes were in the war, but we weren't.
And you said that you were involved in an operation that was escorting, that was taking British soldiers to Singapore?
Right. Those British soldiers had been evacuated from Dunkirk. I don't know if you know anything about that. They were all sickly and hurt. Just felt wrong, you know. But they were all captured in Singapore. Very short time after that.
I didn't know that. So these guys, Singapore, just some of y'all know from British Empire, maybe from other places, Singapore was a disaster for the Brits. I think the greatest defeat in British military history, if I remember right, the number of soldiers taken captive. Monumental disaster for the Brits, not only in terms of body count and numbers lost, soldiers lost, but also, and it was a big psychological blow too, because Singapore was supposed to be the Gibraltar of Asia for the Brits, but it fell relatively easily. I didn't know that a lot of those guys in Singapore had earlier been at Dunkirk. I didn't know that. And when did you get out of the service?
Actually, 46. Signed up for 6 years. We got out. They said anybody with a surplus rate that wanted to get out, could put in to get out, get out. I still have a few months to go yet. I met my wife. She wasn't my wife yet. I met her, and that changed my mind about staying in. I was going to probably stay in until I retired. That changed my mind for some reason.
So you went in when you were 17?
When I was 18.
You were 18, got out?
I was 19 actually when we were Trump.
When did you know you volunteered for this job, or you were drafted?
I beat the draft. I joined the Navy to beat the draft to the Army.
You didn't want to go to the Army. When did you, now why is that? Let's say this, I didn't want to go in the Army, so I signed up for the Navy. The Navy was volunteer, but the Army was draft, and
Well, the Army was volunteer also.
you could volunteer for it. Right. But you knew that if you didn't volunteer for something, you'd likely be drafted in the Army. And when did you join up with the Navy?
In February 1943.
February 43. And what had you been doing right before that?
Going to school?
Finishing high school?
No. I was going to SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas.
When did you graduate from high school?
1942.
Okay.
May 42.
So December 41 took place when you were a senior, I guess, in high school. Did you know, did that come as a surprise? December 41?
Oh, yes. Very much of a surprise.
So neither of you remember anything, do you remember anything in the newspapers about ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Japan, or was all the focus on Europe? Mostly on Europe. I guess because that's where most of the fighting was taking place, even though Japan was at war with China.
We had no idea that they were going to do that. That was a complete surprise to everybody.
Well, let me ask that question then, and I'll put it to Layden first. Why did Japan hit the U.S. anyway? What was Japan after? Why would it hit the U.S. Navy?
Well, I'm trying to think of the expression of Japan wanted that controlled by Asians.
The East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere or something like that.
And they thought we shouldn't be in that area, or shouldn't threaten their area. We shouldn't be in the Philippines. The British shouldn't be in Singapore and other places. And now mind you, the information that we get right now about what's going on in the world is unbelievable compared to what he and I got before and during the war. We hardly had any information. He may have been somewhere in the Navy and didn't even know where he was.
We didn't never know where we were going. We got there.
And they didn't want you to know, right? In case you wrote a letter or something.
After my ship was sunk, I couldn't tell my folks for 3 months. The ship was told I transferred.
when I hit Okinawa, I couldn't tell my folks that I was on Okinawa. And you didn't know what was going on. It's taken me 50 years to find out what went on in the Pacific. And of course, there's a reason for that. When you get back from the war, you want to get your education, get married and have a family, and get a home and get a business and this and the other, so you're not interested. But as you get older, you start thinking, what happened to me way back then? So then it gets more interesting.
So you're in college at SMU, that's a nice school, it's in a nice part of Dallas. How did, you're probably enjoying getting your college education and thinking about your future, especially since you're close to being done. How did the attack of Pearl Harbor change things for you mentally at first, because you don't join the military immediately, but did you know from that point that you're probably going to get involved in this thing?
Oh yes, you couldn't.
So how did your thinking change as of, December 7, 41?
I don't know, other than the fact that you're a little bit more serious and you're thinking ahead when otherwise you weren't necessarily. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it?
At least part of the answer to that was clear. I know I'm going to be involved in this war.
Yeah. And then you did a lot of hoping. You hoped that a lot of things wouldn't happen that did, or a lot of things would happen that didn't. So you just did a lot of wishing, a lot of praying.
Now, when you went to the recruiter, did you tell him you want to be a medical technician?
No. In the Navy, they call it boot camp, but it's the initial training. And at the end of that, then you tell them what you want to do. And some people get it and some people don't. I was fortunate I got to be assigned to the hospital corps, they call it.
Yeah, so you did, after you got into boot camp, you volunteered for that job. Do you remember what it was about that job that caught your attention rather than some other jobs, say, manning an anti-aircraft gun or something like that?
That wasn't interesting to me, manning an aircraft gun. But it was just, I thought, at that time I thought I might have wanted to have been a physician, but as time went on, I knew that wasn't the case. And it probably had something to do with my then choice of occupation, which did not work out. And I'm glad it didn't.
What was that? Being a doctor?
Yeah.
That's what you were already in the Navy and already involved in the war in December 7th, although you weren't involved in actual conflict yet. But how did once the U.S. was formally at war, how did things change for you after December 7th, 41?
No difference other than the fact when we were in war zone, we spent 4 hours on watch and 4 hours off all day. 24 hours, that's what we did. Our ship was up, hit. I was on the gun starboard side of the ship. All I had to do was cross the port side, which is a gun out on. My first loader got hit the first thing. My second loader did. It got a big shrapnel in here in my eye. And when we were shaking, a couple of guys picked him up. I carried him down the ladder. And we got hit with a torpedo in the aviation gasoline supply and 4-8 magazines that blew him over the side. We were probably almost 100 feet above water. And I thought, well, I'll never see him again. But first, they picked me up.
How long were you in the water?
About 6 hours.
And this is in the Atlantic? This is in the Pacific.
Water was warm there.
Do you remember,
Since this is a history class, I ask a question. This is not a test, but who was the supreme or the most powerful military commander in Europe?
For which side?
Who?
For which side?
Didn't understand you.
For the Allies or the Axis?
For the Allies.
Eisenhower.
You say Eisenhower? Okay. Okay, that's right. Who was his equal in the Pacific?
MacArthur.
What?
MacArthur.
How many say MacArthur? How many have another answer? Who? That's right. Nimitz. Publicity during the war and publicity since the war, and what's been written since the war, expresses things in a manner that everybody would think, y'all, not unusual. Everybody thinks that MacArthur was the #1 military man in the Pacific. He wasn't close. Nimitz was by far the greater commander in the Pacific than MacArthur was. 3 or 4 times, he had 3 or 4 times as many men and material as MacArthur did. But MacArthur had a public relations outfit going with him, and there some newspapers wanted him to run for president after the war, so he got a lot of publicity. So,
What did Nimitz do after the war?
stayed in the Navy. He was #1 Navy guy. What would that be called? I don't know. But he was quite a guy. And I wrote this down to be sure that I got the point across. It says in World War II, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz commanded thousands of ships and aircraft and millions of men, amounting to more military power than had been wielded by all commanders in all previous U.S. wars, and that's not counting the atomic bomb. And he had more ships at Okinawa than they had in the European invasion. Also, Nimitz lost more ships, as I said, I think, than all ships that were lost in all U.S. history other than during the Pacific War. Most of them are lost at Okinawa.
Yeah, a lot of lost Lady too.
What's that?
Lady?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Any questions? Let's go ahead, Jack.
I'd like to know what the names of your ships were.
My cruiser along with the USS Quincy, heavy cruiser. We were sunk August 9th, 1942. And yes, Savile Island. And I could tell him that we were been patrolling around ships, and we were on a good patrol, and they knew exactly where we were each time. They knew if they waited to hide us island, we would pick them up with our radar. At the same time we picked the land up. So we didn't know they were there. We went right in between them. They hit us with everything. And I was on the USS Pilot, which we gave to the English. And then we sailed over to New York to the English. We all came back across the United States on a train, a whole ship's crew there. But another ship, another aircraft carrier was mission to Wake Island, CVE-65. And that's the one that we got the suicide plane hit it.
Which one was that?
Wake Island, USS Wake Island,
Okay.
CVE-65, with a baby flat top. The last one I was on was the USS Stroud, which was a 37,000-ton aircraft carrier. A larger, not compared to the FDR or the Reagan's like 4 or 5 times bigger.
I have one more question, then we'll take a short break, just a few minutes. When did you know, I mean, you know, you're joining, you know the war is coming, the war's already started when you're in, so you know it's real. But one thing veterans say in their memoirs a lot, and there's another veteran that we've had here in class who's written extensive memoirs, and I've read the very first, like, it's an 8-volume set, and I've read the first volume. What's interesting to me is, as this fellow is in training, he's writing a lot about his training. He's writing a lot about this girl he's interested in. In a couple hundred pages, there's one fleeting reference, actually, to the war. And my impression is that when he's in training, the war is still kind of an abstraction for him. But he's a bombardier, and so a few months from whenever he's writing that, the war is going to become very real for him. Sort of personal, you know. And so, do you remember when, we'll start with you, Mr. Stroud. Did you have a recollection of when you really realized, okay, I knew that this was serious, but now I really know in a very personal way of this is
Personally, wouldn't
serious?
call it an abstraction. I would say when you're, when I was 18 years old, I was yanked from home and thrown into boot camp, and all you think about is home. So any writing you would do would be pertaining to your friends and your relatives and home, your old girlfriends or whatever. You wouldn't be thinking primarily about the military or what you're going to do in the military. You really didn't have as many choices in the military as you would nowadays. You were just kind of put where they needed you, where they wanted you.
Was there a time for you when, well, then what was that like? So I guess you're in boot camp and you're thinking sort of about home and that. But at what point does the war for you, does it really dawn on you that this is real and it's dangerous and I'm mixed up right in it? Do you have that
First day in boot camp.
First day in boot camp? When you met your CO?
I love the word paradigm shift. There's a paradigm shift in my life the day I stepped foot in boot camp.
What happened? I remember that day too, but it was a little bit different for me. What particular memory comes to mind?
The discipline. They whipped me in line in a hurry.
How long were you there before you were bald?
Before it's what?
Bald. Shaved.
2 days probably. Maybe one.
A lot of lines to stand in?
Oh, gee. When I got married, my wife wanted to go on a cruise. I said, you can go on a cruise, but I'm not going on a cruise. Ship too long and I've stood in too many lines. So I still can't stand a line. I'll do anything to avoid a line just because of my military service. You about the same way?
What was, Mr. Peden, you saw a lot of different combat situations. Can you describe the beginning of the very first combat situation that you got into? What, if anything, is going through your mind when you realize, okay, now I've got to put this training to use?
I remember Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal. Just to let the students.
Called the group.
Okay, and why were you going there?
We were to attack there. We had all crew ships ready, Marines and soldiers ready to go. This was, we waited there from 2 o'clock, daylight. Just at daylight, we opened up on it.
Opened up on the Japanese?
Yeah, you see guns in those little shacks along the beach. Running back, they had a gun back in a cave. They shoot at us. They shoot at us and they go that gun back in the cave again. We couldn't hit it. It bugged us for quite a long time. First time I realized that I was in trouble was when we were shot. Getting shot.
You knew the boat was going in the water and you couldn't save it, or going down and you couldn't save it.
What bothered me worse than anything, I guess, still bothers me today. I dropped the life raft down, and it was gone before I could get to it. I come down just as quick as I could, about 12 feet up. Next time I went up, I cut the bottom lashes first, and I cut the top lashes, and I fell in, I threw my knife so I wouldn't fall on them. I never did get to my feet. They dragged me, life raft and all over the side. The guys, but if I hadn't been fell with it, I wouldn't have got on that life raft.
What did you said you were in the water 6 hours?
Yeah.
What did you do those 6 hours?
I was on the last side of the life raft.
Were you with anybody else?
During the night, we probably got 100 or so of us together. Some of them were on floater nets, some of them with gasoline, ammunition cans, keep them afloat.
Just holding on to me.
It was a big life. I asked him a question right before the class. How often does he think of his World War II experiences? I'd like for him to answer that for you all.
I think about it every once in a while, but as I told you, it seemed like only yesterday it's so vivid. It's something you don't forget, in no way can you ever forget.
Do you remember what sort of things you talked about those 6 hours you're in the water? I mean, it's probably not casual small talk, but what sort of conversations or what's being said back and forth those 6 hours?
I talked to a colored boy sitting on the life raft, he wasn't getting the water. So get him help us swim with it. No, there's sharks that water, man.
Were there sharks in the
Yes,
water?
there were.
Did
They
you?
dropped, depth charges away from us quite on these, to scare them away. But there was so much blood in the water, they were after everything.
Did anybody in the water get hit by a shark?
I'm sure they did, but I didn't know any personally, but I know that they got quite a few.
So that was, in addition to just being in the water, you've got this concern of getting hit from below. And some students know about the USS Indianapolis, I think it is, where a lot of sailors went in the water. And
They were in the water a long time ago.
yeah, and I forget the numbers, was it half of something of those who went in the water also, who survived the sinking of the boat, then a bunch of the rest who survived that, then got
We
hit by
lost
the sharks.
550 men immediately. And that many killed,
Out of how many?
I don't understand. And we had, we buried 50 at sea the next morning.
How'd you do that?
They sorted up the canvas, weighted the canvas, and they told us, some of us standing at the last one of the taps, we just tipped over the side. This is the one I was supposed to tip over the side, we had stuck in the stretcher. And I had to kick him loose.
What'd you think about that? Did you know any of those guys personally?
I read it, it was crazy.
In the water?
You know, he wasn't even next to the water. Didn't have a sense of the ship, nobody after the house. He was on the gun, opposite mine. And I knew that he was, I never said, every time we'd have an air raid, he just would go all to pieces.
Anybody want to ask a question before we take a break? Go ahead.
Yes. You gentlemen, do you remember your first maybe vague recollections of Adolf Hitler or Mussolini? Do you remember when their presence in Europe started? You heard about them in the news, in the newspapers, what was going on, those names in particular, and also at what point did it start to? Did you understand what Hitler was doing with the camps, with the Jews, the Holocaust, all that? When did that become made known to you?
We had a news blackout. We didn't know a whole lot about that sort of stuff. Now, I guess Hitler came into power when we were less than 10 years old. So we weren't paying attention to politics then. But later on, we certainly knew what was going on.
Do you remember ever hearing news stories about him?
Oh, yes.
What were the news stories like? Were they always very derogatory? Was there a state of fear directed towards Hitler, or was it more just curiosity of what he was doing?
Not curiosity. We were always thinking in terms of England, because I believe Churchill did a marvelous job getting our attention. And we were always concerned about the English, and anything that was said about Hitler, he was demonized. I mean, that's okay with me, but I mean, that's the only word to use is the media would demonize Hitler. And as far as time is concerned, I can't recall any time. Can you?
I remember reading about the different invasions of Poland and
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. But if it hadn't been for us getting in that, England was about defeated. If it were bombed every night, and had to live in bomb shelters, it was a terrible thing for them. They were very appreciative of us.
I'm of the opinion that Churchill was the greatest man who lived in this last century. I believe he really influenced the world and saved us from Hitler, really.
Do you think he saw the truth about Hitler when a lot of other people didn't want to see it?
Yes, I do. Yeah, several years before.
Yeah, I sure would.
I guess that you're so alert and so hyper for all those years in the service that I remember it, I think about it all the time. It's a period in my life that I guess it's the most important period of my life and made a real impression on me because I can't forget it. And I keep thinking over and over and over what happened. And particularly, the good Lord bless me because I don't know why I'm here. I'm sure he thinks same thing.
Well, this is the question I wanted to ask you. How did you say the war changed you? You went into the military, you came out of the military. How are you different? I think everybody who goes through the military comes out different, even in peacetime. How did the war experience change you?
My brother tells me about a conversation my mother had with her sister. And her sister had a son my age, a first cousin. And the ladies were talking and saying, well, he's changed. He's not the guy he was when he went off into the service. Well, we were 3 years older and we lived more independent. And we were, when we got home, we weren't kidding anymore. We weren't going to college for fun or football games or whatever. And just answering your question.
Did you have a need to take advantage of the GI Bill, or did you take advantage of that? What did you do with it?
Went to school, graduated. GI Bill, yes.
How did the war change you?
I'm still hyper. It changed me, like I said, about the armor and how they would do. I didn't know how much it had my subconscious mind, because it had really embedded in my subconscious mind. I was really laid back before I walked. I didn't get excited about anything. And I'm glad that the young guys want to do the fight for us now, because older people weren't really good at it. They went all to pieces. Older guys did it. One guy said, I want to see a little blood and guts. That guy was the biggest chicken you ever saw. Such a blood and guts. You didn't want to see more.
Did you use the GI Bill?
Yeah, I bought a home with it.
Bought a home with from the
3% interest.
yeah, the very low
First
interest.
home.
Vets, especially World War, well, I guess all vets, even peacetime vets who take advantage of the GI Bill, including me, have nothing but good to say about it. Do you agree with that? It was, World War II vets say this is one of the best things the government ever did. Do you agree with that?
I think so.
Anybody have a question? Want to jump in? Go ahead, Rob.
You say you're in both the Pacific and the Atlantic. I was wondering if you had different views of the people you're fighting, the Japanese and the Germans.
I have no grudge against any of them now. I hug a Japanese if he's a Christian. Just without any thought of what I thought of him back then. Could you?
Oh, yeah. I have Japanese friends. The only problem that I have is occasionally calling them Japs, which I understand you're not supposed to do.
Just sort of get in the habit of it.
Yeah.
Eugene, did you have a question?
Yeah, you were talking about your anti-aircraft gunner and stuff. And I've read a lot of the books, history books about the Pacific War, and I've seen a lot of pictures and paintings of these scenes of planes coming down on the battleships and carriers, and all like tracers and flak going everywhere, and it looks really chaotic and it looks terrifying. Is that an accurate
Well, you're so busy,
representation?
you don't notice, you aren't terrified. But after it's over, like,
Yeah.
you feel,
How long would the battles go? I mean, would they be 15 minutes, or would they just go on for hours? Or
air raid would last maybe 15 minutes. And it was, actually, the whole battle, we were shown, lasted probably, 19 minutes from the time we got that first shell, it was something. But there were some of the other ships or something, a little bit after us.
and John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering what college life was like for you after you got back. I mean, was it like watching this all kind of?
Nothing like it was before.
Was it better for you, like like with personal relationships with people?
Well, I went to SMU before the war and after the war. And SMU before the war was about like John Brown University is now. And I think after the war, there were something like 15,000 students immediately after the war.
A lot of vets.
Yeah, most of them were vets.
That just reminds me of a question, so just to kind of interrupt, let's back to this question that's on. After the war, did vets talk much about the war among themselves, or was the inclination just to let it go and to move
Forget it.
on? Forget it.
We're talking about it now, but he and I,
Very often, don't we often talk about it?
yeah.
Not after the war. Is this something?
Who would listen?
Yeah.
Who wants to know?
Is this something that you've seen just in the past decade or so of increased interest in the World War II? I mean, did you do these sorts of things in the 60s and the 70s, or
Never heard of it.
why do you think it is that in the past decade there's been this heightened interest in the Second World War?
Well, I think they need to know about it. Young people need to know about it, which is a really important part of our history.
There are a few of us left.
Very few.
Debbie, and then we'll come back to John. And then you only half answered John's question, so we should get back to that too. Debbie?
Well, why don't you go ahead and answer the question?
Okay, well, you were just talking about how college life was different at SMU when you got back.
Well, before, I was interested in dances and football games and fraternities. And after the war, forget about that. Then after the war, you were more concerned about the quality of professor that you had. Because you had good quality professors before the war, but then there were so many veterans that came back, the quality of professor wasn't the same.
What do you mean?
Where are they going to get all the professors to teach all of these students instantly? Instantly.
I also think it's interesting how you said that, everyone wants to listen. He asked if you came back, would you talk about it? And I find that different now because I think if we have two both our two Marines here, and Army men here on campus, and if they came back, I get, that people are interested in what they've been doing, and, they want to know and would want to talk about it. And I know Pete talks to me all the time about it, and he's very open with it, and it's kind of different than what you guys are saying.
Yeah, how has society changed? Why is it? And vets, this is what I consistently hear from vets. When they came home, the war was behind them, and that was it.
That's it.
And they didn't talk about it much. But soldiers who come home from Iraq now, they're the newspaper articles, they're the interviews, everybody wants to talk to them and find out why, what accounts for the change or what was going on with people that let's just put the war behind and move ahead. Was it that the war was such bad news we just really don't want to think about it, or what?
Well,
do you have any idea about that?
Number one, the media did not talk about the war like they do now, not even close. So you didn't have people with curiosity, well, what happened to you on Okinawa? Well, they didn't even know that you were on Okinawa. And then I guess when you were going back to school, there were so many guys who had the same experiences, Well, here, let me tell you about my experiences, Well, the guys he's had a lot worse experiences than I've had, so why should I talk about my experiences? But people just didn't talk about their experiences. Too many who've had bad experiences.
So part of it has to do with just enough's enough, and part of it just has to do with the drive to move on. And
I think it's the drive to move on. That was true with me. Let's forget about it now, and I spent 3 years in World War II, and that's enough, and then let me get on with my life.
was that the same for you, Mr. Peden, when you came home and the war's over? Did you not talk about it very much at all?
Guys that I knew, got me out, except for my brother, I didn't know anything about it. They looked at it done at all, and they didn't know what I'd done. My brother was a lady, I never saw him all during the war. He was a lady, last part of the war. And I went to hold the young girlfriend, and that was the nearest we got to each other. Close, other than that, close spiritually.
But you didn't talk much about the war with
No.
friends and so on after the war? Debbie, what was your question?
Well, I have two questions actually, and they're not really related. But my first question was, did you go to the World War II memorial dedication?
Say it again?
Did you go to the World War II memorial dedication? And if you didn't,
We're a little bit deaf at our age.
Oh, I'm
Say
sorry.
it again.
did you go to the World War II memorial dedication?
Oh, I haven't, but I want to.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering what you thought about the memorial. What do you think? Does it look good to you? Do you think they did the war justice?
My brother has been there, and he says it looks great. That's all I know.
The question was about the new World War II memorial in
You've
Washington.
been to Washington.
I heard that.
And have you seen it?
I
Or
haven't, I read about it, but I haven't.
did you feel gratified that, you know, the Vietnam memorial's been there a while, the Korea memorial's been there a while? Did you have any feeling of gratification that, okay, we have this World War II?
Well, we didn't have.
No. My attitude was about time, dummy. But no, it didn't bother me.
He asked about chaotic, how chaotic it was during battle. We'd, sometimes airplanes would come in close. One guy on a 20 millimeter behind #1 turret. We had a life raft on top of #1 turret. He came around to shoot this airplane. He just blessed that life raft all to pieces. And when it got inside the life raft, he shot that plane down. I just left it in for a ship.
When you saw, here's another question, then we can come back to Debbie's second question. When you saw a Japanese plane go in the water as a result of being hit by anti-aircraft fire, did you think anything about that, or was that just part of the job and you move on?
Good.
All right, one less plane to deal with.
We tried to rescue some of the pilots. They pull a pistol on you and try to shoot you.
The Japanese.
And you're trying to rescue them.
So they tried to shoot you,
Yeah,
and then what would you do then? Just let them go?
yeah. We never deliberately killed anybody. Just looking at them and shooting them. We killed a lot of them at a distance, but I never did shoot anybody close.
Did both of you know that if you happen to be captured by the Japanese, that you had a good chance of being mistreated? I mean, did you know that when you
I
were
knew that,
serving?
yeah. Baton March.
So you knew about the Baton March? And so you knew if you get captured by the Japanese, it's likely to be deadly?
If we'd invaded Japan, they had a whole bunch of our prisoners ready to kill them, and then we hit the beach.
And that was something that our government tried to keep from the populace as to how badly the boys were being mistreated in the Japanese prisoner of war camps, because they wanted all the concentration to be on Europe first, then the Pacific second.
But word got around among the sailors that you knew. Debbie, what was your next question?
Sort of answered.
Okay. Well, in a way, you kind of answered the question, but let me just ask it directly. You ask vets, what did you think about the enemy? And you get different kinds of answers. So, for example, I remember Quincy Adams. He's a vet. He'll actually be here in November 11th. And his answer to the question, what did you think about the enemy, was, well, I just thought that those were German guys who were fighting for their country the way I was fighting for mine. But then we had a vet here a few weeks ago who said, I saw American dead and felt bad for them. I saw German dead and basically couldn't care less about them. I asked him, since that time, have you felt bad for those? And he said they would be German teenagers, dead German teenagers. And he said, no, he still had no sympathy. So you get different responses. So,
But does this have anything to do with being in an airplane or being...
well, that might be part of it. Yeah. So, what did you think about the enemy? What ideas did you have in your mind about them? Did you think of them as, well, he's just a guy like me who's fighting for his country, or what sort of thought did you have? We can start with Mr. Peden and then come to Mr. Stroud.
I thought I was sorry for them a lot of times for what they did, like the kamikaze pilots were. They had no way of being getting back, and they knew they would die. I thought about how sorry that was. When we'd shoot a plane down, I would cheer and be happy, Actually, 2 or 3 guys were killed. Like I said a while ago, I never felt any grudge to them today, and especially today.
But that was just the job.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's obviously that situation, it's them or you. What about you? What did you think about the enemy when you were in there? What sort of ideas did you have about it?
Well, self-preservation is always important, so you're always scared of them. And you were, now, I was there when Okinawa, as I said before, was declared won, but that didn't mean that we weren't in harm's way. And the Japanese army was still on the southern tip of the island, and they were infiltrating north to mix in with the natives. We'd see them all the time. And we were fearful of them, and we were fearful of their surrendering to us because we were afraid that would be a trick.
Why was that? What sort of experiences had U.S. troops had that would make you nervous to even take prisoners if they wanted to surrender?
They'd get up close and drop a hand grenade, well, that's primarily, they started that on Guadalcanal.
They come kick sand in a foxhole, and then they hear him move, they just grab your bayonet. And the sand crab down there have the same effect. I mean, sand crab come down the foxhole, you think that you're dead. Wrestling, you know.
But you stayed away from them, and you were fearful of them. And somebody in our outfit captured 3 Japanese, and we were very fearful of them and stayed away from them, but they were fearful of us too. They were so afraid of us that they lost control of their muscles and couldn't stand up. They're that afraid.
Was that because of things they'd been told what would happen if they fell into the American hands?
I have a very close Japanese friend, and he says that a lot of the Japanese were told that we'd eat them. Are you aware that they ate us?
I know there's some cases. Is this why you see pictures of Okinawan women jumping off cliffs with their babies in their arms rather than fall into the hands of the
That was
Americans?
primarily Guam and not Okinawa, the movies that you see.
The films.
Yeah.
Now, why would they do that? They're told the same thing if you're captured by the Americans?
They were told all kinds of bad things would happen to them. I talked to a guy that said that he went to this cave, there was a woman with a bunch of little children with her, and she was scared to death. She thought they were going to kill her. That was part of his mind to do that.
Anybody have a question? John.
I've heard World War II veterans say that in the last few decades, the media and in some cases the government has been playing games as far as wars going, getting into conflicts with other countries as compared to what we did in what the nation did during World War II. Do you have that sense that it's more of a political game that's going on in recent conflicts rather than getting down to business, or do you think that everything is going the way it should be going? Do you think that we are taking care of business in conflicts around the world?
I'd hate to say that our military are playing games because I have a good fortune of knowing some pretty good generals. I don't think they're playing games. I don't think they've ever played games. Now, then when you bring politics into them, and of course, politics does have an effect, but I wouldn't say that would be a capital P. I'd say politics influences everything, and economics influences everything. So I don't think we're playing games at all. And I think wherever we go, there is a real threat. I think in the past, in particular, I think can't even think of the name, Korean War. I think the Korean War was not managed as well as it should have been. I think Vietnam was not managed as well as it should have been. And I think that Vietnam was overmanaged, not from the military perspective, but from less, I won't even say political, but the civilian planners, what they wanted to achieve, I think was somewhat of a mistake. I don't like the word politics.
We just won that war in Vietnam, that turned us loose.
I think so. May I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
What won the war? Well, I'm of the distinct opinion that our production capacity won the war. We could outproduce anybody. And I never will forget on Okinawa when I first got there, I never will forget how many vehicles were on Okinawa. You could watch them driving 24 hours a day, bumper to bumper. You could see airplanes coming into the airfields, right on each other's tails. You go over and visit the airfield, and if a plane came in and it had a flat tire, or it had been hit or something like that, there were bulldozers up and down the runway. What for? For the purpose of getting that plane off the runway as fast as it could, because there was somebody right on his tail. They were bulldozed off with the crew still in it. They didn't give the crew a chance to get out. So the point is not that. The point is how much equipment we had.
The U.S. economic industrial capacity.
Fantastic. And another question that I've wrestled with for years and have, for me, I do have the answer. I'm not talking about for you. For me, I do have the answer, and that is what makes the U.S. soldier brave, and what makes any soldier brave. And I'm of the opinion, well, I don't know about the Japanese, but I'm of the opinion that the thing that makes us brave is the buddy system. You know, in a war, if you're shooting, there's only one world, and your world is small, and that world is the guy that's standing next to you. And you'll do anything.